Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. I know some of you are in here thinking, all right, there's an attorney coming up. That's like taking a Xanax with an Ambien chaser. This is going to get boring, right? Well, I tell you what, we're gonna have some fun here over the next, I don't know what they give me, 44 minutes and 34 seconds. So let me ask you this. How many of you want to learn in the next 44 minutes how to protect your assets? Let me see a show of hands. All right, how many of you never want to pay taxes ever again? You're all going to jail. That's why you need my firm, okay? Because we're going to be protecting you when you take that approach. No, seriously, I'll be talking today in the next 44 minutes, showing you some strategies on how to protect your assets and also how to reduce your taxes. And so a little bit about my firm, Anderson Business Advisors. So my partner and I, Toby Mathis, we started this firm back in '99. In fact, I know there's some clients in here. How many clients do I have in the room right now, if I can see a show of hands? All right, there's about 10 clients in here. And so we started this firm. It's just he and I, just in a one-room office. And over the course of the last 20-some years, starting at that low point, we've grown it now to over $100 million a year with over 500 employees, not only in the U.S., but we're also international now where we've created offices. What was that, Canada? No, not into Canada. You're too hard to work with Canadians, so we don't go up there. No, it's true. It's too hard. The laws up there are messed up. I mean, they're not like the U.S. They're easy here. Up there, you get all the provincial, federal. But I've learned a lot along the way about building businesses. In fact, not only do we expand from our business, we were also real estate investors. I know there's several real estate investors in the room. Toby and I, we have a portfolio over 200 distinct properties. So we do real estate in addition to that. But our passion really lies in helping individuals put together the right structures. Because what I've found in my own planning is that if you set up entities, they're going to help you do more. And if you know how to utilize the tax code, you can put a lot more money back in your pocket. Because what does money do for us? What is the money going to do for you? What do you say? Give you options. And what does that mean? Freedom, right? When you have options, you have freedom. It gives you time to do other things. And so if we can take what we're doing in our business and then you throw the entity on top of it that produces tax savings for us, that's going to give us back much more time in our lives to be able to do the things that we want to accomplish. And that's what I found from using business entities. So what we're going to go through today, or what I realized, is that when it comes to business planning, a lot of people take this approach, right? I've seen a lot of you in here getting real excited about using AI, taking it back and putting it into your business. But then when we start talking about tax planning and business entities, many times this is their approach. Like, shit, I'll just get to that later, right? It doesn't impact me right now until you're involved in a lawsuit. And then it really starts to hit home. So first off, I want to talk about the first challenge we faced, and that is appreciating the risk, understanding how to minimize your risk as business owners. How many of you in here have been sued at least once? Let me see a show of hands. Look at that. How many more than one time? You've been sued at least twice, 3 times. What the hell are you doing? You have not learned yet? You're not afraid of litigation? Gosh, I need to have your business card because you need a good attorney, right? Yeah, what's the worst part about being sued? Legal fees, there's nothing wrong with that, okay? I'm biased, you got to understand that. What's the worst part?
The risk of not persuading the jury.
The risk of not persuading the jury, but it's the emotional aspect of going through a lawsuit because you don't know what's going to happen, right? That's always hanging out there going, am I going to lose everything? And many times the reason people have that fear is because they don't have their assets protected. Because when you have your assets protected and you're involved in a lawsuit, I'm no longer scared because I know even if you win, you lose because you can't collect on anything that I have. And that's what we do with entity structuring, is that we can put you into a place where now if you are involved in the situation, I'm going to give you some scare stories because I'm going to peddle fear for at least 10 to 15 minutes. Because if you don't understand the fear, you won't take action. If you don't take action, you won't protect your assets. And if you do end up in that place where you're being sued, then your assets will be put at risk and you'll be calling me up and saying, hey, Clint, I need help right away. Well, when you call me up and you talk to me that way, what does that tell me? Yeah, you're being screwed. I mean, sued right now, right? And I can't do anything for you, okay? Because it's too late. The horse has already left the barn. So we want to get in front of that. We want to put a structure in place today so that if that comes knocking tomorrow, you do not have that risk. And there's so many little things that people do wrong in their business planning. Just, I mean, simple things. Does anybody here have business cards? Do you have a business card, sir? Let me see, business card here. Anybody else? I need a couple business cards. Anybody else on the edge? Here's one right here. There's one right here. Let me just grab one more over here. She was working really. Oh, you have multiple cards. Good. Take your sparkly one. Oh, wow. All right. It's not going to leave sparklies on me because then my wife will question why I have, where you get sparklies here in Vegas. Yeah. All right. So we have this card here. It's called Masterit Media. Is this a limited liability company or corporation?
It's a limited liability.
It's an LLC. Why doesn't it have LLC on here?
It does not.
It does not. Now, see, this is one of the simple mistakes many business owners make is that when we go out and we hand out our business card, Master Media, you probably didn't put LLC on there because it doesn't look sparkly and neat on your card. Yeah, you don't like the way it looks. I get it. You're artistic. But as an attorney, you're working with somebody here. You're networking with them. And Maggie, you say, hey, I want to do something with you. And then you end up saying, well, I really didn't. Maybe you had too many drinks and now you don't like that person. But they take action based upon the idea that we thought we were doing something together. And if they were to sue you, do you have protection? Well, you would think you do because you have an LLC. But if I'm representing the person that's coming after you, know what I'm going to argue? Maggie didn't have an LLC. She gave me a business card. It didn't say anything about working with an LLC. I thought I was working with Maggie individually. So your LLC protection now has been put at risk. Yeah. You didn't think about that. All right. So this was your card here. Done in 60 Seconds, Inc. Jack the Hammer, adult film star. Woo! I knew someone might pick up this card. It was kind of slick and smelled kind of fruity. That maybe you're into something. What is VP? Is that like virtual partner or something? You in some new stuff there? Yeah. You don't want to talk about it. It's all right. I'm glad I got rid of that card. There you go. Everybody's going to remember you, sir. And then this one right here is Jerusalem Management Limited Liability Company. You did it right. See, he put LLC on his card. That is what you want to do because you want to designate the fact that if someone's working with you, they can only go after the LLC. Now, because you guys were two guys were there, were good sports, I could pick on you. One of you got it right. Maggie, I'll get you a book as well when you come over here. So, first, Jack. Which book would you like? I wrote two books. One's called Next Level Real Estate Asset Protection. This one's called Asset Protection for Real Estate Investors. You got 2 seconds. All right, you got that one right there. There you go, sir. Hey, give him a round of applause. What's that? If you want to add that one, yeah, right. Yeah, they're really great books. They talk of, even if you're not a real estate investor, if you want to take a look at them, we have them in our booth back there. They talk about various strategies on using business entities to not only protect your assets, but also to reduce your taxes. And so here's a shameless plug. The books, if you want them, they're $20 each. But since you're at this event, I'll do a special. I'll do 2 for $50. If you go there, just say you want Clint special, and there you'll get it. Okay, so... Yeah, right. There you go. See, you want me to look at your card? You don't have anything on there. D. Ash Thompson. You owe me a book. Okay. So let's talk about AI. So AI does have risk here. All right. So here's one of the things that we have right now that you see coming up. People that are using AI in their business. One of the areas in which attorneys are starting to attack businesses that are using AI is in discrimination. Now, you're wondering, well, how does AI discriminate against somebody, right? They don't see the applicant that's coming in for the job or for your rental unit. But the problem is that people are building prompts and programs around how to screen out certain types of our criteria. And so what you're beginning to see now, there's a big case out in California that deals with this, where they've gone after and they're suing a business stating that in its hiring practices, the AI model that they built discriminates. Now, what you could say is, well, I didn't build that. AI is discriminating. It's not me. The fact is, you helped create the model. You're using it so that it makes you liable. And these are things a lot of times that people don't think about because we look at AI and we think, oh, well, I mean, what can it do? It's just going to help us improve. It's just a computer program. It's not any of that. Attorneys will find ways to weaponize this against you. It's going to take them a little bit of time. I mean, the lawsuits are not there yet, but as we start to use it more and more, they will begin to rise. I mean, there's a A great example I can think of off the top of my head is right now there's this firm out of New York that is suing small business owners that have created websites. And they're going after these small business owners, and they're saying that their website is not ADA compliant because blind people cannot go to the website and understand what's for sale. And the article I read in the Wall Street had to do with an individual who sells e-bikes. And this person who's blind supposedly wanted to buy an e-bike. Now, why is a blind person going out riding a bicycle? Right? That's just stupid. So you put the blind guy on the bike, he gets hit by somebody. Who's he going to sue next? The person who sold him the bike. So you just look at it and go, he's trapped. But this law firm has been shaking down hundreds of businesses all across the country saying their websites are not ADA compliant. Now, the ADA, when they passed it under the first Bush, that was never the intent. But attorneys find ways to weaponize things. So another way, of course, you're probably familiar with this, copyright infringement. That if you're using material in your marketing, your advertising, you got to make sure it's not somebody else's. Otherwise, you're going to receive a letter, a cease and desist. And if you're making money at it, they may come after you and try to collect some of those profits because you profited off of somebody else's work. On my YouTube channel, I've received a few letters just from my YouTube because I've used, or my staff has used in the past, music that they thought was free, that we could use this music. And then we get a letter, oh, you can't be using that tune on your YouTube video. And so this is a very real aspect of it. Disclosure of private data can be a risk as well as we get out there and we start using AI as well, because those models tend to suck in a lot of stuff. And if you're turning around and spitting that information back out and other people see it, then you, as the person who has been disseminating that information, becomes the liable party. And so we got to be careful. Now, does that mean we don't go forth and build our businesses? No, we go forth and we build our businesses a smart way. And I'm going to show you how to do that. But I want you to think beyond just AI is creating risk for our businesses, because there's other things here as well. You're all business owners. And so when it comes to liability, our business and the things we do inside of it, the things our employees do, can create risk for us. So here's a great example. So when I first started out, I've made a number of mistakes along the way in growing our business. And that's one of the things when I teach, I tend to teach from my own personal experiences. So back in 2001, so we've been operating, Toby and I have been running the business for 3 years. And I've been driving a blue Ford Ranger, okay, ever since law school, and I still had this Ford Ranger. And so here I'm in the practice, 3 years into the practice, and I'm making good money. I'm thinking, you know what? I need to up my game, all right? As an attorney, I don't want to drive this little blue Ford Ranger. I'm going to buy a nice car. So Toby and I went down to the Lexus dealership, and we decided to lease, each of us leased a Lexus. He got the LS400 sedan, and I got this big SUV. And so I drive it home, and I pull up into the driveway. My wife comes out, Tracy, and she didn't know I was going to get this car and lease this car. And we leased it through the business. And she came out, and she said, wow, you got that for me? And I said, no. And then she turned it on me. She goes, what do you mean it's not for me? I said, well, I got it for myself, hon, because, I've been driving that blue Ford Ranger, and you have this Mazda 626. It's a beautiful sedan. I should be driving this. And she just gave me that stare, and she said, well, you don't care about me and your children? Because they're going to be safer in this than in that. She pointed over at the sedan. Okay. So I gave her the keys. So I'm driving the 626. She's driving that car. Now, at that point in time, Tracy would sometimes do things for us, like take cash that we would receive. So back then, people used to pay with cash when they come in. We'd have at events. And so she'd take cash and she'd run it down to the bank and deposit it or put it into the safe deposit box that Toby and I had at Bank of America. Well, one day she's driving to do this, and she's involved in a little fender bender. She ran into the back of somebody. Now, she wasn't going fast. And she called me up. And she said, hey, and she'd only had the car for maybe about a month. She goes, hey, I ran into someone. What do you think I said? See, I can hear the women in here. They say, are you okay? No. I didn't say that. Guys, what did I say? Yeah, is the car okay? I know, right? I was not yet fully trained at that point in my marriage, okay? All right, I've been married for 33 years. I am now fully trained okay, as a husband. So here's what happened. So I said that. She goes, oh, you don't care about me? And then I tried to be an attorney and run logic on her. I said, I know you're okay. Because if you weren't okay, you wouldn't have called me. I would have got a call from a paramedic or from your mom. So I know you're fine. Let's just skip to the car. I know you're going like this. I know, get a shovel, Clint, right? And just keep digging till you hit China. Because that's what I did. So I told her, I said, listen, I know you don't want to hear this from me. I'm so sorry. She goes, your sorries mean nothing. I said, when the policeman shows up, please do not tell him you're going to work for the business or you're doing anything for the business. Why? And I said, because it's going to put the business at risk. What are you going to do? What are you going to say, hon? Don't you want to know? And she hung up on me. She turned her phone off. Yeah, she got back at me. Now, she didn't say anything, and luckily nothing really came of that small fender bender, but it was an eye-opening experience. You see, when you're out there and you're driving around for your business, right? You're out there and you're going to look at a deal or something like that. Every time you're driving, if you're driving for your business or your vehicle's owned by your business, understand this, that is bringing liability back to your business, and it can create a problem for you down the road. Those of you that own real estate, for example, that can create an issue for you. People say, well, I mean, it's real estate. How is the real estate going to affect my business? Because the real estate can create liability for us, right? Somebody gets injured on the property and then the tenant sues. Within the last year and a half, I was dealing with a client. One of his tenants was cooking drugs in the apartment. And he passed out from the fumes. The house, actually wasn't an apartment, it was a small single family. The single family caught on fire and he killed himself. He burned up in the fire. The family is suing. Okay. Now, why are they suing? Because they're asserting that he did not have working smoke detectors. Well, of course there was not a working smoke detector in a house where somebody is cooking drugs because they disabled it, right? Yeah, but that doesn't stop the lawsuit. That doesn't stop you from being liable. And then you put on top of that, because you're building, this guy was cooking meth, it's not just a wrongful death. It's also now an environmental contamination issue you have with that property. So these problems start to compound. So how do they affect your business? Because if you get sued personally and you own that property in your own name and they get a judgment against you, they got to collect. Well, there's no one wants the burned up drug house with the environmental contamination. What they're going to look at is, oh, you got a successful business over here. You've been maximizing AI. Well, I'll tell you what, I want a piece of that business. And so then they go after your business. Or worse yet, you have your savings account in your personal name. They'll go after and they'll garnish your savings account. So those are issues that we face. Other external factors that we have out there as well. Children. Anybody have kids? Young kids still at home? All right. They're little liability generators as well. 100%. So I remember when Tracy was traveling with you, we were in Orlando one time and I get a call from our son. We got a call from our son who told us that our daughter, Carly, she's the younger one, she had been pulled over by a policeman for going 70 in a 35. Yeah, right? That's pretty high. Now, I got lucky on that one because the policeman that pulled her over, I happened to know. And so he brought it down under a reckless driving charge, but he wrote her for going, I think it was 10 miles over the speed limit. And so we called up Carly. We said, Carly, you put the keys away. You're not to drive until I get home. And we'll have a discussion about it. So we flew home 2 days later. And my wife's mother is there. And she's, making sure Carly's not out driving around. And what I like to do is I like our kids to stew on things, right? I just don't want to address it right away, the elephant in the room. I just want them to know the elephant's there. And I want to keep looking at that elephant for a while. Because they know it's coming. But they just don't know when it's coming. So finally, we sit down for dinner, and I'm ready to have this discussion with her. And I said to Carly, I said, hey, what do you think you were doing? She said, Dad, you don't understand. And I said, well, then you show me what I didn't understand. She said, when I was driving the car, the guy in front of me was drunk because he was swerving all around the road. And I said, yeah, so what? Well, I had to get in front of him because he was drunk. I said, so you thought it was best to speed to get around a guy that's drunk that's swerving. That was your best choice of action. She goes, well, I didn't know what else to do. I said, how about stop? How about turn around and go the other way? You see, when I explained to her, I said, what you did there is you put your mother, myself, everything you have here, your iPhone, your iPad, your future education, all at risk because of one stupid decision that you made. Because not only were you, the driver, putting other people at risk, but you had a passenger in the car, right? You had Ali Potak, your best friend, in there. You could have easily gone off the road, lost control. If she would have died, you'd have hit somebody else. Where do you think that liability falls on? Falls back on us. And that's the thing people sometimes don't appreciate with the kids is that they can bring liability to you. I'm very proud of our daughter because she's very precocious and she's learned some things from me. Because I asked her, I said, do you understand what I'm telling you? Because she's looking at me and she said, hold on a minute, Dad. And she went upstairs and I heard her walking around upstairs. She came back down. Tracy said, what do you think she's doing? I said, I don't know. And she came walking down. She's like this. She had her hand behind her back and she walked into the kitchen. I said, what's behind your back? And she said, Dad, didn't you write a book on asset protection? I said, yeah. So are your assets protected? Yeah. So if I did get in an accident, we wouldn't lose anything, would we, Dad? So Tracy looked at me and she goes, she's not getting off on this because she just played into you. All right. Well, only 1 week of restrictions. But see, things like this can happen in our lives. And if they do happen, then we've got definite concerns here. And so what can they do if they come after you? They can lien your home. They can sell your personal assets. They can come after you and garnish your personal bank accounts, or they can foreclose on your business interests. So what we want to do is we want to create a structure. Let me just see if I can get this iPad working here. I like to draw. Now, this is not my iPad, so if anything inappropriate shows up on here, I borrowed this from my partner, Toby. So here's what we want to do here. We want to have your business is going to be over here. This is going to be your business. So you have your business entity on this side. That could be an Inc. It could be a limited liability company. We'll talk about that in just a little bit when we get into the tax planning side. But this is your business, and this is where you run your activity. And then to protect ourselves, what we want to do typically is we're going to want to create another entity. So if you're building AI and you're creating intellectual property with whatever you're doing with AI, do not own that intellectual property in your business. Because if your business is sued, then that intellectual property is now going to be put at risk. For example, the 2 books that I just showed you, the copyright to those books, okay, I own that separate from Anderson. I kept that separate from Anderson. So if Anderson was ever sued, no one could take my books, all right? They're going to be held separate. So what we like to do then with our intellectual property is we want to create another entity over here. Typically, this is going to be an LLC, and this would own your IP. You'd put your intellectual property into that company there, and then you can license it back to your business. And the reason we want to do this is that if somebody came after us, we could lose our business, but we don't lose our ability to generate income any longer. Because if that IP is what's generating income for you, by separating it out into another entity, you're protecting it from that business. So all you got to do is go out and create another business. And you can go right back into the same type of activity because you still own your IP. I've seen a lot of business owners, and especially in this space, that when their business went down, they lost all of their data because maybe they filed for bankruptcy. Maybe they got sued into bankruptcy. The bankruptcy trustee would come in or the creditor would come in and they would take all their customer data. They would take everything they've generated because that was the most valuable asset. They would take the IP from the business. And so the strategy then is to keep it separate. Now, the other thing I like to do is I like to create another LLC over here. And here's where I keep my cash. Okay, I call this my safe limited liability company. When I'm setting up these LLCs, by the way, I'm typically using Wyoming for my limited liability companies. And the reason I use Wyoming is because I don't want anybody to know that I have these entities. Okay, I want to keep them completely private. And the thing about Wyoming is that when you set up a business entity there, they do not ask. That is, the state of Wyoming does not ask for any information about your entity. So you could do an asset search on you, and I would never know that you have that entity. Okay, it's impossible to find it because nothing is collected by the Secretary of State to point back to you. And it really amazes me how many people miss this. There's Bill Belichick? Yeah. So he's dating a 14-year-old girl right now. And she looks like that. I saw this. It came up on my news feed. And I saw this guy with her, and she has all these LLCs. So who wrote this article listed all of the limited liability companies this gal has created and Bill Belichick has created, and all that information is out there. And I thought, had they just been to an event like this, they would have realized they went about it the wrong way, because that should be completely private. But they set it up in a way or in a state that collects all their personal information. So they have zero privacy. And one of the things I find with asset protection, because we've dealt with lawsuits with our clients, I probably had at least 300 or 400 clients that have gone through lawsuits. And they tend to always walk away just by settling for their policy limits, because the creditor can never discover what they own, because all of their assets are hidden. And the way you do that is by building a privacy shield. So we like to keep this. Your savings should be over here in this limited liability company. Now, this is important as well. So in your business entity itself, as you start to generate cash and you have profits inside of here, what you should do is take those profits out and move those profits over here. Do not allow your business to sit on a bunch of cash. Because if a lawsuit were to happen and somebody's coming after your business and it has a bunch of cash in there, then that cash is going to get stuck. You're not going to be able to start pulling cash out and protecting it and moving over to a different entity, because that's going to be considered to be a fraudulent transfer. So you want to be proactive rather than reactive when it comes to asset protection planning. And if you have real estate, same thing goes with your real estate. You should have different structures set up here that owns your property, so that if something were to go wrong with one of your properties, you're fully protected there. So this is what we're doing. Any questions on that? I can take time for 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, right there. Speak loud, please.
Password daughter. Date. Ah.
So when you transfer the cash from your business LLC to your cash LLC, what you're doing is you're distributing money to yourself as the owner of your business. You're taking a distribution, and then you're turning around and making a contribution over to that company. Now, that little plan right there is a great way to protect your business. And some people say, well, Clint, my business still needs money. Well, then if you still need money, you can have your cash LLC loan it back to your business, and you can further compound your protection by loaning and liening your own assets. That's called a friendly lien strategy. We use that a lot for our business clients that are doing stuff like this, and we make it even more unattractive to someone who's coming after them. But that's a great question. One more right here, red shirt. Right there. Yeah, you got your hand up. So if you have the money in the LLC, which LLC? The one that's the business, the black box or the blue box? Okay, so when you have your business LLC set up, use your business card to pay for all your business expenses. You never want to use the blue box to pay for your business expenses, because if you're doing that, then you're basically allowing someone to pierce the veil of your entity and say it's one common enterprise. So you have to be very specific on which card you pull out. Now, you can make some mess ups along the way, that's fine, but generally speaking, you want to stay with that. Guys, I got to move on. I only have about 16 minutes left, so I want to give you some more material. If we could go back to the slides, please, that would be great. All right, so let's talk about the next challenge that we have here when it comes to asset protection. Can you flip that over to the PowerPoint? Awesome. Okay, proper tax planning. Now, this is really, really important here. Okay, we've been talking about this good versus bad planning. Now, it really depends where you're at in your journey, okay, when it comes to planning for taxes. And when I asked you, how many of you never want to pay taxes again? You know, I was in that phase. There's a certain point in my career where I had that mindset. It's like, man, I do not want to pay taxes. And so I remember one time Toby and I sat down, and our CPA, this was before Anderson actually brought in CPAs. So our firm is attorneys and CPAs. We figured out a way to make them all work together, right? So we work on strategies to not only protect you, but also reduce your taxes at the same time. Now, before we had built out our tax department, okay, we have over 175 people just in our tax department. Before we did that, we used another CPA to handle our taxes. And I remember that I got this bill from them that said, I owe $350,000 in taxes. And I looked at Toby, because at that time we shared an office. We had one common office. I said, hey, man, if you've got $350,000, you must be stealing from the business, because I don't have this. So are you stealing from the business? He goes, why would you ask it that way? I said, I'm just curious. He goes, no, I don't have it either. I said, exactly. So we need to do something different. So we figured out a way in which we could take what was a tax liability and turn it into a loss on our tax return. And we went back up to the CP and we said, hey, are you okay signing off on a return? We're going to change our income. We're going to do this, this, and this. And it went from owing the IRS to being owed several $100,000. He said, yeah. He goes, I wish I would have thought about that. You see, that's when you realize, and I looked at Toby as we got done talking to him, I said, this is a problem. He is a preparer. He is not a strategist. And so many people fall into that trap. I fell into that trap, Toby and I did. And so that's why Toby went out and built a firm, a tax department inside of our firm, and we train our attorneys to be strategists, not preparers. Preparers, anybody can find a preparer. It's hard to find someone that finds opportunities in the tax code that can benefit you. And I'm going to show you a few right now. But what I learned from this, though, is by reducing the taxes, and what I mean by good versus bad, is that by reducing the taxes down to zero and actually showing a loss, sometimes that can also hurt you. Meaning that when I would go in to get a loan, because then we wanted to go out and get an SBA loan to start growing the business because things started taking off for us, I'd walk into a bank and they would say, hey, I need to see a copy of your tax return. Oh, really? Yeah, you got a problem with that? I said, well, you're not going to like what you see on there. And they said, what do you mean? Send them in. So I'd send in the tax return. And then they'd get a call. Hey, you think you can qualify for this loan? I said, yeah. He goes, you make no money. And I said, well, that's just on paper. I really make money. He goes, well, how do you make money if it doesn't show up in your tax return? Are you doing something illegal? And I said, no, I'm doing something creative. Lenders don't like creative people, I found out. Okay, so then I had to understand I had to show some income. And so my point in sharing with this is that it's a strategy, right? You have to balance this out. That's why there's 4 main tax provisions I think every business owner needs to be aware of, okay? The first one is Internal Revenue Code Section 162. And this is ordinary necessary business expenses. Your entire trip down here is an ordinary necessary business expense. You should be writing all this off. And if you're not, you've got a real problem there with you're scared of the IRS then. That's the only thing I could be telling you. The thing that I find with most people when it comes to their taxes, they always have this, I don't know if I can write this off. Listen, when in doubt, deduct, okay? That should be your mind, your focus when it comes to writing things off. Now, the other section is Section 1366 and 1368. And what this code sections pertain to is that many of you, for your businesses when you're starting out, should be ensuring that you're setting yourself up as an S corporation for federal tax purposes. Because what that allows you to do is lower the amount of money you have to pay employment taxes on. We see a lot of business owners that start out in an LLC, they're a sole proprietor, and they get hammered on employment taxes. This is an easy win. Now, it's not for everyone, okay? Some people need to be in a C corporation, but it's one of the sections that is really important. Now, 174 and 41, this happens to do with the research and development tax credits. So if you're AI, if you're investing in AI, there are tax credits that are available to you that start to compound as you make more investments going forward. So you need to be aware of this code section. And then section 199A. These 4 sections here, especially 199A, which allows you to basically take 20% of your income and not pay taxes on it, or what we find with business owners who are doing what you're doing, typically are missing 1 or 2 of these components. So if you nail these down, if you're working with your CPA and you got to say, hey, are you taking advantage of these 4 things in my business? Then you know you're on the right track to keeping your taxes as low as possible. So let me just give you a quick example here. So here's a scenario. Let's say the gross income from this business is $170,000 and the person made a $20,000 investment into AI training. Now, he also decides to pay himself a $60,000 salary out of that, and he devotes from his time that he's working for his business, he puts 35% of that into R&D to develop something in AI that's going to improve his business. Now, when I say develop something, I'm not talking about just throwing something in Chat GPT and saying, hey, rewrite this for me, okay? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something that's going to improve your business, right? That's going to make it better. You can use off-the-shelf solutions. So what you heard about today, what they're talking about that you're going to be attending this evening, if you're not, you need to get there. Those type of off-the-shelf solutions help you obtain this R&D credit. Now, I'm going to assume for this taxpayer, he's an effective rate of 24%. So you can see how the numbers work out. So if I was working with this client right away, what I'd be able to do for him and show him is that by setting up his business as an S corporation and taking that salary and reducing it down, we're going to pick up a $12,000 tax deduction. That is, he's going to save that in federal income taxes because he doesn't have to pay it over in employment taxes. We're also going to capture that 199A deduction, the QBI, which roughly is going to save you $17,000 in taxes there because the IRS has it built in. If you set up your business this way, you're entitled to take this 20% deduction. We're going to get an R&D credit because now we're going to take the amount of time he's invested into it. Now, understand this, a credit is not a deduction. A credit is dollar for dollar, okay? Dollar for dollar. You get to write it off. You owe $3,000 in taxes. You take $2,300 against that $3,000. So you're going to be able to take an R&D tax credit of $2,300, and then you're going to write off your training under 162 for $20K. So all in all, what you're going to end up saving here is $23,000. That's how much more money you're going to put back in your pocket. That is freedom right there. That is what's going to allow you to do the things that you want to do in life so that you can go out there and enjoy yourselves, because I truly believe you can do this when you set up your business the right way. Tax savings can do it. Now, there's a lot of questions about how the R&D tax works. So I'm just going to cover it be real brief about it. So the way the R&D tax works is that you have section 174, which says if you have R&D expenses, okay, you have to amortize those over 5 years. So that means if you add them into R&D, then you got to take a portion of that, you deduct it over 5 years. But then they have section 41 that I talked about, and they say, well, of that larger pie of R&D deductions, we're going to give you the ability to use a credit for a portion of that. So there's these circles sit within one another. So you get the 174 deduction, plus you get to pick up on the section 41 deduction as well, which is the tax credit. And so this really gives you the ability to start doubling down. Now, when I showed you that tax credit, it was small to begin with. The reason why it's small is because when you first start out, you don't have any history. But as you show history with this and you start putting more time into the investing, I mean, I heard Francis and them talking about, it's 2 years, right? They're going to be with you for 2 years. So by being with you for 2 years, next year, this is going to grow even more for you because now you've established a baseline for this deduction. So what are we looking at here? Here's the 174 expenditures. These are typically R&D expenditures here. And then here's what's the qualified research expenses. So you can take a picture of that so you can get an idea of what that is. But this is something that a lot of CPAs are not focusing on for people because they don't understand it, right? They're just like, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to learn about it and dive into it. Or they're afraid of audits. Listen, this is not something you should be afraid of. They built it into the tax code for a reason. You need to be capitalizing on it by taking what you're doing here and then implementing it tomorrow and putting more money back in your pocket. All right, the third challenge that people have is that I've been talking to you about LLCs. I've been bringing up the S corporation. But understand this, planning in general is not a one-size-fits-all. And that's the problem people have, okay? I know this gentleman up here, right? Jack the Hammer. He's like, how did he get that picture of me? Okay. It's a monthly meeting down, or annual meeting down here in Vegas, right? Actually, it's coming up in January. So this is actually a real issue that we have, is that we focus in and we think, oh, it's just so simple. And it's really not when it comes to this. What I'd like to tell you is that, when it comes to AI and putting business plans in place, a lot of times people delay and they think, I'm just going to put this off. And then they miss opportunities. And one example that comes to mind is that I just got back. We were in Florence. Our daughter got married 2 weeks ago. Thank you. Yep. Married a great guy. He's one of those, the hardest thing I think to do as a father is to give away your daughter to someone else, because you realize at that point in your life that you're no longer that person in her life that she relies upon, all right? You're no longer that rock, and that you pass that mantle to another man. And it's really difficult, but at the same time, you're gaining someone in that, right? Someone else that's going to be there to protect her. And so you both fill that void, although she that person in her life, but she now has a great husband. And so we spent that week there for her wedding. And then we decided to take a week and we just drove around Portugal with my wife's cousin and her husband. Now, her husband runs a very successful marketing business called Juice Marketing. And 2 years ago, it was in December, and he calls me up. He said, "Hey, Clint, I've got a tax problem this year." And I said, "Oh, you do?" He goes, "Yeah, here's what I got. I think I have to pay in taxes. This is what they said. What do you think I should do?" And I said, "I think you need to put in place a captive insurance company. Okay, based on your issue, you need to get this captive insurance company in place, and we need to get it in place before the end of the year," which gave us about, 28 days. You know what his first question was? What is it going to cost me? That's exactly right. What is it going to cost me? You see, at that time, Robert had a cost mindset. How many people know people in their lives that have that type of mindset, right? Because my father was that way. He's throughout my life told me, "You're nothing but a damn fool doing that, spending that type of money, making that investment." Because he never looked at things as what it's going to do for me. He always looked at things as what is it going to do to me. And that held him back. My father, he ran a side gig, is investing in real estate. He has a 14 property portfolio, and it's great for him. Mine's 200. Why? Different mindset, right? So the first mindset issue that we face there is the cost mindset. So when you see opportunities that are there, what I would encourage you to do is don't look at it as a cost. Look at it as what is it going to do before me? I am making an investment into my business. By going forwards and putting AI into place and making that investment, it's going to do a lot for you. Now with Robert, he missed out. He paid several $100,000 in taxes. And the following year, he came back to me and he said, "Hey, I asked the wrong question. I was focused on the wrong thing." I said, "I know you were." And we had that conversation. We were driving around Portugal because he said, "Clint, because of what you finally kicked me in the butt to do, I am going to save in taxes this year over $500,000. I said, "That's awesome, right? You're buying dinner for the rest of the trip." So this is what can happen. But, along the way, what I've also found is that you can get stuck as business owners into what I call low value time work. And you're not putting your efforts into high value. And so I'd like you to think of this. When I saw them, Chris and Francis and Brian, talking about what they could do for you, this really struck a chord for me personally, because I was in a position a year and a half ago, because if some of you have been to my YouTube channel, you've seen what we do on social media. So when AIs first started coming out there, what I was doing, I was cutting my videos and I was getting involved in all these different AI programs, and I was getting really deep into them. And I was figuring out ways that cut the videos with all the words showing up in there, and then a new program would come out, and I'm like a raccoon. "Oh, that's shiny. I'm going to go try that one out." And so then I'd be screwing around with this one over here. And over the period of 6 months, my CEO came to me and said, "Clint, what's going on with you?" I said, "What do you mean what's going on with me? I'm learning all this stuff." He said, "Well, that's great what you're learning, but it's not helping our business." I said, "Why do you say that?" He goes, "Because your content creation has gone way down." You see, what he explained, I knew it. I knew what he was saying right away. See, I was focusing on the wrong thing. I was focusing on the low value stuff. See, my high value is to create content, not to learn how to market that content, right? I can hire people to do that for me. And so that's what I ended up doing. I ended up hiring people to take this for me. Now, before you get there, the other thing that I realized is when we're working with them, I said, "Listen, we need to get you with people." Because the guys that I hired to do this, I said, "I got to put you with people who understand it so you don't make the mistake I did. The last thing I want to do is see you make the same mistake I did, is that you get so wrapped up in this because you don't have someone like this organization right here to guide you, that your production and value drops way off." And so what you have the opportunity to do while you're here this weekend is to take your business to the next level, to make that investment back into yourself and focus on what is most important. So think about that. By making this investment while you're here, you're going to be able to 3x, 5x, 10x your business. Once I had that shift and I realized that there are people out there that know how to do this and I just lean on them, my content creation took off again. The quality of my content went way up. And so I've been able to leverage that. And I hope you understand and appreciate that what you're learning here is something that is very special. And a lot of people that are outside of this room right now that are not here today, that didn't want to invest the time because they say, well, it's a cost mindset again, they're never going to get it. And so you're going to be one step ahead of them. So take advantage of it. The last thing I want to leave with you is that if you want to learn more about structuring, just like it is about business, we can teach you how to set up your business the right way. I have a special offer for you where we'll do a free strategy session, and then we will help you develop a customized tax and asset protection plan. And to take advantage of it, it's really simple. Some of you have already signed up at our booth. That's great. I also have this QR code right here. Just scan this code, go to the site, fill out the form, and then we'll contact you and we'll set up a time and you'll work with one of our strategists and we'll help get your business structured the right way and take you to the next level when it comes to your business planning. Guys, I've used up all my time. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
That's a wrap for this episode of the AI for Business podcast. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit subscribe and pass it along to a friend or colleague. We appreciate you being here and we'll catch you in the next one.